I love those type of learning experiences that really give confidence to students, like really empowers them and lets them be a leader. I think that I keep hearing this a lot, is giving more student choice and some more student-led learning opportunities is really the way to go in terms of engaging them, especially in this virtual atmosphere. Adam, you tell me, like in your social studies class that you mentioned earlier, have you been finding that giving them some more student-led opportunities is engaging them in that process rather than, you kind of giving that information to them?
I think, the biggest, such a big light bulb moment for me this year was speaking to my social studies 11 class. And I've been, I think, maybe more open than I would have been in my recent teaching years. But this year, more than anything, being a first year online teacher, I've been willing to listen and really open to hearing the students' opinions on how they want to learn. And I was going to mention this in a bit, but I had a great conversation with one of my students who stayed on our Zoom call after a class, and he goes, Mr. Stevens, I really appreciate what you're doing, but I would love an opportunity to show my artistic ability in this class. So, like, will there be any ways and any opportunities for me to do that? And I go, absolutely, and I saw that, and I actually mentioned it. It was in a Pear Deck presentation I did where students can draw their answers. And I was blown away with how many students had this artistic ability that I don't have, where they can answer, historically based questions with pictures, with visuals that are just happening in their mind. So it really blew me away. And since then, I've been able to design some projects and some activities where they're really the driving force as to how they're presenting their information.
I love that.
I love that as well. That really hits home around the whole notion of ownership. And I think as an adult, if you own something, you're genuinely interested in it, you meet what we would consider to be an engaged kind of environment. So 100%, like letting kids ask questions, letting kids wonder, letting kids be curious about what you are asking them, and then demonstrating their learning and it's not like the Wild West, do whatever you want. It's a curated, structured, guided path to that exploration. The other thing I love too, and so rich in South America, or really anywhere in the world, is the notion of real world application. So we're learning this in a historical context or a scientific context or whatever the case may be. And because we know kids always want to know, why do I have to know this? What's the application of this? And I think in order to kind of rush through a ton of content, in many times in my teaching career, I have sacrificed that. And now I think that has come back to my forefront, that's an important piece that the kids understand. Here's the present day application of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that if students can meaningfully engage with something and relate it to what they care about or one of their learning styles, like that student wanted some more art-based experiences, if they could relate to it and if it's speaking to their learning style, then it becomes meaningful for them, right? And they're engaged and then they learn. So we just have to pick up on those cues and take the time to, give them those opportunities rather than, as you said, Kathleen, sometimes, teachers are a little structured in their ways and we want to have A, B, and C, but we have students that are from A to Z, right? With so many different, complexities to them, different strengths, different interests. If we hit a little bit and give them all those opportunities to, speak to their own learning styles and what they're interested in, then we know that we will be engaging them.
I love that idea as well that Adam mentioned about the artistic representation of their learning. Yeah. I think that's a new thing as teachers as well that we need to embrace. Kids can choose how they demonstrate their learning. And one of the things that we have learned, I think loudly and clearly through the online environment, is that testing doesn't work. Traditional testing doesn't work. So how do kids demonstrate their learning in an online environment where we can assess accurately as possible where they are. So notions such as artistic representation. Another one is visible thinking routines. I love the visible thinking routines put out by Harvard and Ron Richards. The whole idea that you can pick apart your thinking in a structured way, and then the assessment comes through a dialogic nature. So you would have a conversation like we are having today with the students. You would ask them a couple of questions. They have their thinking in front of them as prompts. And as a teacher, we can sort of mine their thought process and correct it either formatively or assess it if you had to in a summative way. So lots of like exciting new ways to assess without the test kind of way.
I love that. And someone was just telling me the other day, which is sort of like what you're just talking about, is how they assess their students based on like their progress and tracking their work in a video. So their students will track their progress, track their thought process through a video-based experience, and then share that video with their teacher. And that video serves as an assessment piece. So, you know, like they track their understanding of a math concept or a social science topic, and they tracked their thought process and talked about how they did something. And it's sort of like a video diary of their work. And I thought that was a great idea because, you know, we do have to think out of the box in terms of assessment and think of different ways to let our students show understanding. So I thought that was a great idea.
You talk about disengaging. I know that's not our topic today, but when you think about how kids are disengaged with their learning, you again have hit the nail on the head with assessment. If we are assessing in a traditional method where we are just adding up and dividing, okay, this is what you get, that is disengaging because kids are being knocked down right out of the gate when they don't understand something. So when you look at a cumulative assessment, which is what Jody was just describing, and you are assessing them where they are at that time, that's, I think, encouraging, emboldening, and very engaging for kids because it shows, oh, my teacher is respectful of my learning. They see my learning growth, and they are not penalizing me because I didn't understand it in October, and now I understand it beautifully in March.
It's really at their own pace. Okay, I'm going to throw out this idea. I was talking to a teacher the other day, and this is the first time I heard of this. Maybe you guys have heard of this already. But he was telling me how he was letting his students learn new concepts asynchronously, like away from the classroom on their own time. So he was providing them, he was actually creating collections within Edwin with different media resources, different video tutorials that he had created, different learning objects. And he was giving his students these collections to learn and work at their own pace on their own time. And then when he brought them together virtually, synchronously as a class, that would be the time that he used to like do more application of that new knowledge, working collaboratively and problem solving using that knowledge. So he called it a flipped system. Okay, that was the first time I heard of that before, but I thought that was genius because it was really engaging students where they were kind of learning it at a student-paced, student-directed environment, and then coming together, and all of them were kind of collaborating now with their knowledge and kind of applying that knowledge on different problems or in different real-world situations. So I thought that was a genius idea. What do you guys think of that concept?
You've really hit a few incredible educational tools there. You know, the students are guiding themselves, but also in a safe and controlled environment. If you're using the Edwin collection, you know you're getting high quality content, and the readings are up to their grade level or their reading level, and also just as the flipped classroom model describes, you're bringing those students back for a discovery based on what they've learned, and you know what they've taught themselves based on sort of this small guidance that you've provided them. But it's student centered, and they're going at their own pace. They're learning, what they're really doing, what they're interested in, and then they're coming back with a fresh perspective and ready to discuss. And the whole time, it's been under that safe umbrella where you've really.
Right.
It sounds perfect in my opinion. Yeah.
I concur. I love the flipped model. And I think we've been doing that since COVID without really identifying it or labeling it. It's impossible. We all have learned, like smacked in the face, we cannot disseminate all the information. And I think that's been changing globally for a while anyway. But I completely agree, the sense that kids need to come to class prepared. Like all of us adult learners, when we're going to something, we read up on it. We have some background knowledge prior to being exposed to new information. So I love the flip method for that. That's an awesome idea, having kids create collections within the Edwin system and becoming the sort of mini subject experts, or having some solid knowledge around that. A great extension to that might be to do an online stations then. So if all of the kids create a collection on some aspect of the topic, perhaps that we're introducing as the beginning of the unit, then the kids could actually do like Caitlin Tucker, who I absolutely love. She's like the queen of blended learning and everything else, I think, right now around education. She's really big on the online station. So the kids move through those collections and continue to gather and build their knowledge. And then, as you both just said, having that dialogue where kids actually know something and are contributing is amazing. And you talk about engagement. Wow, you feel really good about yourself when you contribute with your colleagues something that is of value. So I love that.
And
I like that idea. Go ahead, Adam.
I was just going to say, and to sum it up, you're bringing it all back together, and you're saying, okay, you've learned something on a topic that you're interested in, and now you show me what you've learned in any way. And to go back to our previous question, you show me whatever way you want to do. Show me what you've learned, how you've learned it.
I love those type of learning experiences that really give confidence to students, like really empowers them and lets them be a leader. I think that like really we were talking about like real world and giving them like meaningful ways to relate to what they're learning. Like that's real life. Like that's what we do. Like, we go ahead, we learn something. And even if you're a teacher or not, whatever your career is, you bring it back to the table and you share it. And I think giving students that opportunity to be the leaders, to be the teachers, and to bring back the information that, they just worked on their own pace and their own time is very empowering. And I think giving students more of that, like, is very, it's a very good opportunity, and it really engages them in that process. So, I like that idea too.
Did want to mention, and I don't know whether it fits genuinely within the engagement bubble, but when we ask kids to explore on their own, I think kids are engaged and are successful if there's clarity of direction, instruction, guidelines from the teacher. Yes. I think everyone, again, might be a bit old school, but I truly believe people thrive within the boundaries or when they understand the boundaries of their learning or what they're supposed to do. So Adam explained that he had this great unit and the kids came back and they had, they understood the parameters of what they were supposed to do and where they are supposed to go. So Edwin certainly provides that. The ecosystem, go in, go wild, find information, do this. You have this much time. I'm looking for this many points on this kind of format. Do it in the notes category on the reader, however you as the teacher structure that. But I really feel that it allows kids to go, okay, this is what I know I'm supposed to do. This provides the clarity, the guidance, the structure. And that can be through a hyperdoc. That can be through the wrapper on a collection. One of our colleagues, Sherry Ross, created a collection, as I'm sure many of our colleagues have, but she clearly articulated in the wrapper, week 1, this is what you do, or this needs to be done by week 1. Week 2, this is what happens. Then we're having a synchronous online discussion this week on this topic, and that information was laid clearly there. And I thought, okay, that is good for kids to understand that structure. Keeps them kind of in line.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought that up because it is totally about engagement, Kathleen. So you're right on track, I think. But I was talking to a teacher the other day. I've been having a lot of virtual consultations lately, which is great. I was talking to a teacher the other day and she said, I love Edwin. I love the learning objects. She's like, but when I send the learning objects in a collection to my students, she's like, I feel like, she hits that Google Classroom integrated function and it auto-populates that information for her and she sends it off. She's like, I feel like my students don't know what to do with that collection. And I brought up that exact point. And I talked to her about, it's great that Edwin does auto-populate that the Google Classroom assignment for you. But one step further to take as a teacher is going in there and under the instructions is really scaffolding and writing down what you expect your students to do with the collection. So, the collection is great. It's a great piece to send to your students. Let them work through it at their own pace. Let them add to it. But definitely it does require some parameters around what you want them to do and some expectations. So we just talked about, writing down like number 1, complete this first learning object. Number 2, find 2 additional pieces to add to the collection. So you really do have to give them those expectations for them to then have that student-led experience. So it involves a little bit of structure for a lot of engagement, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think what you mentioned is really important. I mean, it is self-guided to a point, but still, we need to be in the background. We need to be willing and able to step in when students need it. Some students will need more support than others, but it's really up to us to find that out. And that's with constant check-ins, as you said, scaffolding assignments, getting certain checkpoints. Just so that the students are on track and going at a reasonable pace.